I've been observing how you've been standing on things that can't support you. The viewpoint of one individual, the quantity in a single account, a single body's health, the actions of a single youngster. Allow me to show you the rock that has been beneath you the entire time before this little message concludes. When those move, the one that stays still. Get a bit closer. Remain close. This room is not in a hurry. I am the earth beneath your feet. You are visible to me. The mother's grin is the only thing keeping her family together, and she knows that if it falters one Tuesday afternoon, everything will fall apart. I'm by her side. No one has overlooked a parent whose self-worth has been secretly tied to a late-arriving paycheck this month. A daughter has based her feeling of well-being on the disposition of her parents. Additionally, the parent has erratic moods. The daughter is also worn out. The person who was once the group's strongest friend, helping everyone get through difficult times, now has nothing left for himself. I can see all of you. The young man, whose whole grounding was a job title he no longer wears, feels the streets shift beneath him as he strolls through them. I can't avoid any of this. I count each wobble. There is also the lady who constructed her whole inner existence around a marriage that has become more subdued than she had anticipated. A grown son is still waiting for his father's approval, which might never come to pass. A widow who has been relying on the deceased person's memory is asking it to perform tasks for which it was never intended. A young couple whose foundation has been the fantasy of a child that their bodies have not yet produced. And the weight of waiting has started to cause the dream to falter. I haven't been able to see any of those tiny ledges either. I've been standing next to them all, observing the soul at the top working tirelessly to maintain equilibrium, yearning for the time when the soul turns at last and recognizes that a deeper ground is ready for them. You did not decide to base your inner life on these tiny surfaces. You were instructed to. When the loudest adult in the room gives them praise, a child learns to stand on it. Because at that moment, the floor appeared to be the firmest there. An adolescent discovers how to establish his individuality through performing, since the one ground was performance. Between report cards, that remained the same. An adult comes to associate her sense of security with a checking account. Because every time the household balance fell, the home she grew up in trembled. You've been standing on little surfaces, are not defects in character. These ledges are what you discovered. When you were a child, the earth was not level, and you've been expertly balancing on them for a long time. The balancing has not infuriated me. I've been close to it. Be gentle with it. I wish you were aware of that behind all those tiny ledges. There has been a waiting older floor. Put your foot flat on the ground and let it to push back. Only one foot. Observe how the floor applies the same music pressure as you are applying to your shoe's sole. It's not your imagination that the pressure is coming back. It's the floor doing what floors do. It doesn't bargain for assistance. Before agreeing to hold you, it does not verify your deservingness. Because that is what it was designed to do, it holds. And without your appreciation or attention, it has been keeping you in this precise manner throughout every stage of your life. What the mind forgets, the body remembers. Give the foot a few more seconds to remain flat. Without your assistance, the floor is capable of doing this. You've spent a significant portion of your inner existence practicing what would happen if one of those tiny surfaces collapsed. It was the center of an entire bedtime routine. The mind examines every nook and cranny of your finances. The idea of a relationship changing causes the chest to constrict. The recollection of a conversation in which someone's approval momentarily slipped causes the shoulders to raise toward the ears. This is not a sign of weakness. This is the instinctive habit of a creature that has been taught by its upbringing that its safety depends on moving surfaces. If a creature is placed on a moving floor, it will try to learn the movements for the rest of its life. That's not faith. That is fatigue masquerading as alertness. Permit me to put the costume away. The neighbor, whose marriage has become more subdued, has been informed that her home serves as the foundation, and she has been putting in extra effort to maintain that foundation. A man 2 streets away has been told that his career is the cornerstone, and he has been devoting all of his time to strengthening it. and he has lost both his delight and his sleep as a result of the reinforcement. Every flutter in a grandmother's chest is seen as the floor about to give, and she has been informed that her health is the foundation. They are all ledges rather than foundations. Although ledges are practical, slender, frequently lovely, and occasionally abundant for a season, no one was made to walk a tightrope all the time. It was meant for you to stand on bedrock. Somewhere along the way, you learned that fortitude is a personal quality and that strength is something you produce. If you want to be the kind of adult who does not crumble, you have to put in more effort to construct yours. Some people have more than others. The lesson made sense. Mostly, it came from voices of kindness. Because the burden of being your own foundation would bend a spine before its time, it generated a generation of musicians who carry their backs at 30 in the posture of 50. I have never been a teacher. It has never explained how I created you. You were not meant to be a self-sufficient structure by me. There was no human person. Your body's design reveals the truth about your soul's design. Your feet weren't designed to be airborne. Without a chair, your spine was not designed to support itself. Your lungs are not designed to produce oxygen on their own. Each layer of your body takes on a holding from an external source, such as music. It holds the air. The chair is grasped. They hold the floor. The ground then holds the floor itself. Additionally, something older than the earth holds the earth in place. And I am the older one. The truthful, musical depiction of strength is not a solitary tower. It is a ground-bound monster. Every powerful life you have ever looked up to was a creature that did not exist on the ground. That design was not unique to you. No one asked you to be. Hands that didn't know me well drew the image of the strength you've been holding in your chest, the lone figure on a hill, jaw set, completing it all without assistance. Some of those hands intended goodwill. Others exploited the image to prevent you from maturing so they wouldn't have to. The doodle has cost you years of learning, regardless of where it came from. Put down the sketch. Press it up against the wall. The thickness of the lone figure's legs has little bearing on true strength. What the lone person is standing on has much to do with true strength. When a tree is planted in shallow soil, it grows quickly and falls during the first severe storm. In the third year, a tree planted in deep soil appears less remarkable, grows more slowly, and is still standing in the 60th year. The trees you have been admiring are not the right ones. The neighbors who had seemingly perfect lives just a season ago, but are now in ruins, were not failures. The first strong wind discovered them because, like most of the earth, they had shallow roots. The slower-moving life next to them, which you occasionally wrote off as dull, was like a tree softly digging roots in the rock. There was no discernible difference between those two trees. It was all about the invisible difference. You cannot construct a true foundation. A true foundation is something you find within yourself. The discovery isn't a project, that it's an acknowledgement. When you stop attempting to put together a floor beneath your life, you begin to see that the floors you constructed have always been supported by a floor. It is the foundation for the floors you constructed. It is essential to your profession. It is the foundation of your relationships. It is the foundation of the bed you sleep in. Every foundation you have ever known has been built upon a deeper one, and mine has been the deeper one. Let me tell you a song I once gave to a young monarch who was still living in caves. Not the refined monarch depicted in royal portraits. The king who was hunted. Sleeping in stone shelters across the desert at En-Gedi, a guy with a price on his head was on the run from another king who had resolved to murder him because no roof in the nation was safe for him. He had worked as a shepherd. He had played music at court. Years earlier, a prophet had promised him a throne. Furthermore, the promise had started to feel more like harshness than benevolence. Because he was traveling through wilderness rather than palaces on his path to the crown. He was so hungry that he ate consecrated bread in one of those caverns that he was not absolutely permitted to touch. Additionally, the priest who gave it to him realized that the hunger of a hunted man does not first examine the rules. Unaware that he was hidden in the shadows at the back, the king, the father of his closest friend, entered another cave with the intention of killing him. He could have put an end to the pursuit by killing the king there. He decided against it. Mercy restrained his sword. He continued to run for years longer than any sane person would have, sitting in the stillness of his own choosing. He could have listed his own ingenuity when the pursuit eventually came to an end and he sat down to compose the song of his rescue. He had an abundance. When it would have been simpler to get revenge, he could have applauded his own military instincts, devotion under duress, and self-control. He didn't. In a single breath, he enumerated 8 of my names. No one else could see the 8 ways I had been his ground over the years. I told him this. Psalm 18 verse 2. The Lord is my stronghold, my shield, the horn of my salvation, my God, my rock, my fortress, and my deliverer. Go through it slowly with me. There are 8 names. He didn't choose them at random. Each one refers to a distinct manner in which an individual is held once the world has ceased to embrace them. And all of them had been necessary for a hunted king. Rock. He begins with rock, something that remains motionless while everything else moves. A slab underneath the slab. A type of stone that will remain after his great-grandchildren have passed away and was already ancient when his grandfather was a youngster. It might be interpreted as the floor beneath the floors. Bottom layer. Bedrock that agrees to hold you up without first determining your merit. Stronghold. Defense against attackers. A fortress is more than a wall. When an army arrives, a small number of vulnerable individuals can flee within a fortress where the walls protect them while the army exhausts itself outside. Get the photo. The supervisor who evaluates you based on figures, the inner critic, the relative who disapproves, and the voices that have been assaulting your self-esteem all year. Outside the stronghold, those voices are like an army. There are walls. They already contain you. Mine prior to the creation of the army. Deliverer. One who withdraws. When you are trapped, come to your aid. When your car breaks down at midnight, a deliverer is the friend who comes to the parking lot and drives you home without making you feel unimportant. The hand that reaches into the well and pulls you out without inquiring as to how you fell in is known as a deliverer. This year, you've been stuck in a lot of places. The rescue arrived on time. As soon as you started to sink, help was on its way. Oh my God. Take note of the tiny word my. Individual. Not a God in general. Not a textbook God. My own. Close partnership. The God is not said by a hunted king. My God, he exclaims. In other words, the person who is aware of his name, his songs, his foolish errors with the priest's food, his self-control in the cave, and his loneliness in the dark. A father's personal belongings. When the father enters the school corridor, read it as a child saying, my dad. The tone is that. The relationship is that. My rock. Once more. In a single verse, he mentions it twice. Some readers have questioned why. They have never resided in a cave. A lyrical image is not necessary for someone who has been hunted. In order for the body to believe someone who has been hunted, the main point must be stated twice. Here, repetition is not literary. A weary soul sticks to a profound truth via repetition. Stability. Stability. The reason it was repeated was not because the poet ran out of words, but rather because that word was the most important. Hide. A location to flee. A tiny chamber within. A secure residence. During a big storm, there's a place beneath the table where the sounds from outside can't reach. You didn't always realize you had a safe haven. For years, you have treated me like a far-off workplace that you only come to on Sundays. In the midst of a chase, a hunted monarch treats me like a room. That is the distinction between sanctuary and religion. The office is religion. The room is a haven. In reality, I've been offering you a room. Protect. It is not the item that stops the blow from being delivered, but rather something that stands in your way. Something that stops the blow before it gets to your body. This year, a lot of the punches you thought came your way did not. They arrived at the shield. Because shields operate in this way, you felt the hit through the metal. You don't need to break because a shield trembles. However, the wound for which you were prepared never touched your skin. Your bruising is not as old as a shield. I have a shield, the horn of my deliverance, lifting strength. In the ancient tongue, a horn denoted unadulterated strength. the kind that is carried on the head of a wild bull. Power that refuses to compromise. Power that prevails. Salvation is more than just safety. Additionally, salvation is being raised. There is a strength that does more than just prevent you from falling. When you've already fallen, it lifts you off the ground and puts you back on your feet. This year, you have been picked up more times than you have counted. You lack the willpower to lift. The trumpet was lifting. Stronghold. A tall tower with a broad perspective. A hilltop watchtower that allows you to see approaching threats well in advance of their arrival. You get more than simply a safe haven when you stand in my stronghold. It provides you with a viewpoint. A parent gives his youngster a view from the watchtower. An extended view. A larger perspective. Because you can see the ridge after the ridge from where you are. It's the kind of view that eases the fear of the next ridge. You've been attempting to read your life from the bottom of the valley. I'm giving you the long view from my fortress. There are 8 names. Just one breath. He had required them all at once, so he listed them all at once. He had been kept together during the years in the wilderness when nothing was evident in his surroundings. As I previously stated through my prophet, there was a stone in my old city that had been tried and tested and was a valuable cornerstone of a solid foundation. Despite being certified, the ground I laid does not pass an inspection. The sole method available for testing bedrock was used to test the ground I laid. By bearing the weight of ages worth of sobbing people without ever breaking. Take a look at the query I used to begin these words. You've been standing on things that can't support you, I told you. This is the reason your soul has been worn out. Because the tiny surfaces you have been standing on were never intended to serve as foundations. They were intended to be gentle ledges, practical instruments, and little pleasures. A mother's smile was supposed to be a smile, not a wall that supported a lot of weight. Paychecks were not intended to be a foundation for personhood, but rather to be just that, paychecks. It was intended for a child's attitude to reflect the day's weather rather than your soul's. You didn't misuse any of those little surfaces, hence none of them failed. They were never designed to support the weight you placed on them, which is why they failed. Leads are honest, and you've been begging them to be bedrock. What bedrock holds, they cannot. I am bedrock. Every ledge you've ever been on has bedrock beneath it. Bedrock does not shift when a ledge does. Bedrock catches when a ledge gives. Bedrock is the following step after a ledge finishes. Here's a little something you can use for the remainder of the week. The next time you notice a movement in the ground underneath you, stop and ask one question, because all that is seen is always fleeting. What do I currently stand on that is independent of me? Conduct a brief survey. The body, the relationship, the work, and the emotions of a loved one. In one way or another, all of those rely on circumstances outside of your control. I am the answer if there is no answer. Put one foot on me, then the other. You don't have to locate the entire floor before taking the first step on the way back to the earth. It's one step at a time. The floor is reached by the first step. It has always been the initial step. The first time you pose the question, you won't feel any different. The 10th time, you might not feel any different. However, you will notice that the slight tremble in your chest has become less noticeable about the 31st time. A hard piece of news will arrive on a Tuesday afternoon sometime around the 50th, and you'll notice a solidity beneath your previous emotion. The individuals closest to you will comment that you appear different this season at some point around the 100th, and you won't be able to give a precise explanation because the difference isn't something you created. It's something you finally allowed yourself to stand on. When you have a time to yourself, take a second practice beat. Don't rush to leave the small surface you were balancing on once the question has emerged. Many of those tiny surfaces are nonetheless beneficial. A salary is nice. Relationships are beneficial. The well-being of a youngster is good. Throwing away the little surfaces is not the practice. Restoring them to their proper size is the goal of the practice. Paychecks are paychecks. A relationship is just that, a relationship. A child is a child. Everyone takes up their proper place in your life and is no longer required to take up the space beneath it. The bedrock beneath it also returns to its proper location. The soul standing on top of them stops being so exhausted when both things find their proper place. A third, more delicate movement. You'll be tempted to test it the same way you test ice on a pond the first few times you find the bedrock beneath your weak. Ready to jump back at the first crack, one toe out. To be honest, that is. Your body is prudent to exercise caution because the floorboards of your past existence cracked beneath you. For as long as necessary, exercise caution. But over time, you'll realize that the fissures you've been anticipating have stopped occurring. There is not a single fissure in the bedrock beneath 1 foot. Under 2, it is not cracked. When you are finally prepared to put all of your weight on it, it won't crack either. Give yourself the time you require. There is no clock on the bedrock. It has been waiting for slower spirits than yours for millennia. Leave the word rock here below, not as a catchphrase, but as a single tiny stone placed on the bedrock you have finally recognized beneath your feet. If something in these words is getting to the point where your foothold has been faltering. 7 little letters, one for each of your upcoming mornings, are already waiting in the pinned area above this video and will be delivered to your inbox as soon as a gentle yes opens the latch. Grab them. Hear me, if you've been the strongest person in every room for years and your own bedrock has been everyone else's crises. You were truly strong. You were also exhausted since you were unable to support yourself. The day you finally put the weight of the same strength you have been giving to others on what keeps you will feel completely different. Put your weight down. This is the floor. The floor has been present. You were never supposed to be on the floor. Hear this, too. If your paycheck arrived late this month and you've been clenching your chest over the amount, one helpful ledge is the paycheck. It is not the bedrock. A parent who has multiplied little lunches into festivals when the math should not have worked, fed people during famines, and snuck bread to hunted men in caverns is the cornerstone of your finances. The foundation has never been the math. Beneath the math has been the father. Raise your gaze 1 inch from the spreadsheet to the person holding it. Hear me clearly. Parent who has been gauging your value based on the actions of a child who is having difficulties. Your foundation is not that child. You weren't asked to put all of your identity in the hands of a young person who is still figuring things out. Remove the burden from them. They are unable to bear the burden of being your pillar of support, and the longer they feel it, the more difficult it is for them to walk. Put the burden on me. It will be easier for you both to breathe. You'll both stand more erect. When neither of you is required to be the other's ground, you will both realize what a parent and child are truly supposed to be to each other. Hear this quietly if you've been scared to plant roots again because the last location you did so collapsed. It really did collapse. The sorrow was genuine. It has been observed that you have been gradually re-establishing trust in private. It's true that you're afraid to lay your weight down anywhere. Take that terror with you. Put it on the bedrock as well. Both the weight and the dread can be supported simultaneously by the bedrock. Before you are permitted to stand, you do not need to be fearless. Just as the pursued king tried each cave he slept in until the night he eventually slept through, you simply need to test the floor 1 foot at a time. To the friend whose health was the one thing you vowed would never break, yet it did, the doctor's news was not what you wanted, and both your body and your inner ground have been crumbling. Pay close attention to this. Your basis is not your physique. It was never intended to be. I have taken better care of your body than you have acknowledged, and it has been a cherished home that I have rented for a season. And the same bedrock that supports the strongest body in the room beside you is still holding it in its weakness. I was unmoved by the diagnosis. The diagnosis did not change your surroundings. The floor underneath you remains the same as it has always been. The ground has not altered, and you are standing in the same spot as a healthy individual. Allow the body to do its own thing. Something deeper holds the soul on top of it. Slowly press the back of one hand into the palm of the other until the pressure from one meets the resistance from the other. Hold it for a single breath. Next, let go. Observe how each hand was insufficient on its own, and how their interaction created a tiny foundation that was stronger than either hand by itself. It's a tiny parable, that meeting. I'm meeting you. Your weight and my ground coming together. We don't build a foundation by ourselves. The twos meeting does. Throughout your entire life, the meeting has been accessible. All you need to do is press your hand into it in the same manner as the back of your hand is forced into your palm. Bring one line with you. I am the earth beneath your feet. If you can, say it once in silence. Then, without attempting to feel dramatic about it, let it settle. The receiving is the settlement. The standing is the receiving. The standing has already started. Amen. 7 short letters are waiting inside the pinned space below, depending on which of these words found a stable place within you. One for every morning of the upcoming week, delivered to your inbox as soon as a silent yes opens the door. Grab them. Give this to a friend who has been struggling to stay upright. To ensure that the next word reaches you before the next wobble, hit subscribe. It was never intended for you to stand on this by yourself.